All right, we'll call the meeting to order. The meeting has been noticed to Evans Print and Media Group, WCOW Radio, Magnum Radio, La Crosse Tribune, Sparta City Hall, and Sparta Free Library. Mr. Russ, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, there are not.
Thank you. At this time, I'd request a motion to adopt the agenda. I have a motion from Mrs. Lopez. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
A second from Mr. Burns Gilbert. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Right. If everybody would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Mr. Russ, if you could please state our SASD mission statement.
Yes, to educate all students academically, emotionally, and socially to inspire curiosity and resilience.
Thank you for that. Tonight, do we have any public input?
We do not.
Thank you. All right, with that said, we'll move to item 2A, employment recommendations. Mr. Russ.
Yeah, attached to board docs are the employment recommendations for your consideration. Very straightforward. We're fortunate enough that we did get a school psychologist. Very lucky. So we're very thankful for that. And she was a former employee with us as well and left. And then we did get her back and she's very excited to be back. So very excited.
Thank you for that, Mr. Russ. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to accept those recommendations.
I'll make the motion to accept the employment recommendations.
I have a motion from Mr. Wells. Do I have a second on that?
I can second that.
A second from Ms. Behrens. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 5-0 with 2 absent. All right, item 2B, discussion and possible recommendations on the Sparta Area School District Facilities Assessment and Master Planning as completed by Bray Architects and Market and Johnson. That'll be Mr. Russ, Ms. Hauser, and the team.
Yes, before we have, I'd like to have the team, if that's okay, I'd like to have the team introduce themselves and their company before we get going.
Sure. My name is Clint Selly with Bray Architects. Also, it is green. Can you hear? You can hear now? Okay. I'm Clint Selly with Bray Architects. Also with me is Matt Wolfert from Bray Architects. You guys want to introduce yourself? Mike and Jason from Market and Johnson. And also with us is Brian Brewer from RW Baird.
So we have a lot of team. We just need the other slide. Yep. Before we jump into the presentation tonight, this is a culmination of many months of hard work. And you're going to see just the surface of all the things that we've been working on, and we, meaning, the district and our partners. We're going to go through the partners that are right up there. There's a lot of people working on behalf of our district, and we just wanted to show that before we jump in here. But before we get into, these are the team members, the information presented tonight, besides the facility assessment, which Clint's going to go through, the rest of it, when we talk about preliminary designs and stuff like that, that is simply preliminary brainstorming, very, very fluid. May say, well, what about this? What about that? You missed this, you missed that. Those are the sorts of things that this starts this process. there's going to be a lot more opportunities for the public, for the board, for our staff, our students to give input along this journey. So that kind of lays the foundation, and I'll let Clint take it from there.
Hey, real quick, Clint, before you go, Mr. Russ, as they're going through their presentation, can would you like board members to hold their questions until the end, or can we bring them up as they come along here? I'm open either way.
I guess if you could write them down, that would be ideal. You will have opportunities. We broke up this segment into a couple different sections. One is the facility assessment. So Clint's going to go through the actual assessment itself, show an actual one and not show the entire 300 some page document. And then there's going to be questions on the facility assessment. And then we're going to get into the preliminary designs, questions. Then we're going to get in some finances, questions, and that sort of thing. So you'll have an opportunity after every section and then again at the very end. So
thank you for that.
Just to point out a few other partners that have been along in the process. In the facility study, we had some engineer partners assist us for the HVAC, plumbing, and electrical MSA. We also had a structural engineer help us to look at some issues we'll talk about tonight. And then school perceptions, it's anticipated to do a survey this fall, potentially. So they would be our partner for that. And then we also enlisted a roofing consultant at RSI to help with evaluate there. Oh boy, now we got it. Evaluating the roofing roof systems for all of the buildings in the district. Just wanted to circle back to the timeline. This was something we presented way back when we first interviewed for the project. And I would say for the most part, we've kind of followed along. Let's keep moving back. Followed along with the procedure. There is, well, if I point, you're not going to be able to see it, but there is a dot there showing where we sit in July. So we have gone through quite a long process to date. I would just like to say this is we don't consider this completed. This is still even the study document. In terms of seeing it in totality, this is the first time even our district partners have seen it. So we will continue to update it as people see, you know, we have a date wrong or you didn't catch this. I would say it still is in draft form, and as noted that the designs are very preliminary at this point as well. But again, I think where this schedule is showing us is going to a survey this fall, which is going to be really critical. That's going to be a survey that will go out to all of the mailboxes, residential mailboxes in the district, to really find out what the will of the district is, or what the will of the community is for the direction forward for your district. Some key next steps then. We do have an August 9th meeting. I think Soup with the Soup is kind of the branding for that. So it's going to be kind of another continuation in that process. And really the idea behind that will be to share much of the content you see tonight with the community, with the intent that we're getting great feedback from them. Again, a lot of the comments of what about this? Did you think of this? Those types of things. So that'll be a great engagement session as a lead-in then to the community survey that will go out this fall, with then likely a presentation to the board. I would say probably in early November, as we finalize those dates. We would also plan, and again, we haven't worked out the specific dates of this, but we'd also plan to bring a draft of the survey to the board for your review and approval before that does go out to the community as well. So the facility reports. So as mentioned, this is a pretty lengthy document, and I'm still going to go through quite a few pages tonight, but I'm going to flip through them very quickly if you wouldn't mind switching to the other presentation. Again, we have a printout of that document in front of you. What this really is, it's about a condition of the district. So this is looking at flooring, ceilings, roofing, walls, all of those fun things within the building. So I'm going to actually run through kind of out of sequence of what you have in front of you, since the high school is probably I would say as kind of we started this process, it was one of the more focused elements due to the age and condition and so forth of that facility. So I'm going to kind of just focus on the document and pages from the high school. And then give you you'll kind of get a flavor for what is contained within the report. So the initial page here just shows some general information, when it was built, general size of the building. There's a little bit of information on typical class size within it in terms of the actual physical size of the room. Again, part of this process is a little bit of kind of a forensic exercise, understanding the site and site limitations, understanding, oh, the colors didn't show up here. Understanding the evolution of the building itself. So it's interesting. So again, this is actually the building evolution diagram within there. Hopefully yours has some colors on it. I'm not sure why this one doesn't. But this is actually one of my favorite drawings in the whole thing. This is something our engineer partners take a great deal of look at when they're looking at the project and understanding and doing their reports. Again, just kind of understanding when the building was built over time. As we go through, again, just identifying the overall floor plan. Sometimes many districts don't even have a completed kind of a nice completed floor plan for their various buildings. So doing this for all district buildings and doing our best to log kind of what the usages of each of the spaces are. Again, probably semester to semester and maybe even sometimes week to week or month to month, some of the uses of the rooms may change. Getting it into the meat and potatoes then of things a little bit more. One of the things we hope this document is it's kind of an easy document for people even that don't understand what buildings, funny acronyms, what a boiler is, what a water heater. I mean, quite frankly, you know, again, a general person, that they can flip through this and kind of get a sense for the condition of the building. So at the top middle, you'll see there's kind of a little graphic with some coloration there. We're assessing a lot of things on a good, fair, poor scale. Good meaning it's a roof we just replaced a few years ago. It's has plenty of life left in it. Fair would be a roof maybe we replaced 10 to 15 years ago, still holding up in good shape, but we need to make note of it. And poor would be a roof that's not doing well, it's failing, it's periodically leaking, and we need to adjust it. So that's kind of, again, just a general sense of it. Of what that rating is. So again, we have the information here in a very quick, clear graphic manner. And then as you go down, there's a little bit more parts and pieces of where things are deficient. And actually in the back of this document, there's an appendix with the overall engineer reports within them. So if you have trouble sleeping at night, turn to the appendix and you'll fall asleep very quickly, but there's even more information. So again, we hope that as a lay person in your community, if they were to get their hands on this and take a look at it, it'll be valuable to them because they can flip through and see it. Or your facility manager looking through it can say, okay, my boilers were installed in 1999. They're 24 years old and I need to think about replacing them in the next few years. So again, I'll kind of flip through these quickly because I'm talking a lot. Again, in general, your buildings are well kept, they're well conditioned, but I think you fall victim to a lot of the things that many school districts have where just over time, the age eventually catches up with your ability to fund major projects. So moving through the systems, we then take a look at the interior and exterior of the building, again, kind of looking at things as a categorization. I think the cool thing about this part of the document is we do have then floor plans that kind of correspond to some of the conditions. So if there's issues with a wall or something in that nature, it's noted on here. So I'll kind of pause with that in that there is one item at the high school that the district kind of brought to our attention. And quite frankly, you kind of do notice it walking through the section of the building. So it's the oldest 1950s section of the building. It's the one-story classroom section. That building was built with a concrete structural system up above. It's a if you want to get into a very technical, it's a post-tensioned system, meaning there's a thick concrete slab with steel rods running through it. The district actually has documentation that somebody noticed it is sagging over time. There's about a 2-inch, what we would call deflection, meaning if you measure the height of the structure at the walls and then measure it at the center point, it's about 2 inches of deflection or it's sagging down. I mentioned earlier we had a structural engineer come out and take a look at it. He provided a nice report back to the district. While there isn't any eminent concern for the structural condition, the recommendation within there is if the district from the long-term planning perspective, that the district really should address that part of the building structurally. There was some provisions put in place for things to watch and continue to monitor it. Market and Johnson will be assisting the district with that process. But when we get to the concepts, we'll kind of speak a little bit more to that section of the building. We also take a look at the flooring and ceiling. So again, this graphic up here is kind of that good, fair, poor assessment. And then we actually get into the different ceiling types that we're dealing with within the building. Similarly for the floor, when we look at floors, one of the things that's very common in schools is sometimes asbestos containing floor tile. So again, working with the district, some of their past reports and even our own general observations, it's very easy to see they're generally they're 9-inch by 9-inch tiles. They if the industry did anything very well, they don't make anything 9 by 9 anymore. But again, we try to note some of those things on here. Looking through the condition of the exterior windows, I believe that, yes, this is the windows. So condition of the windows and condition of the doors of the facility as well. What's very typical, what we see in many schools throughout the state is it's called a hollow metal door. So it's a steel or metal door, and it just obviously doesn't hold up well over time to putting a bunch of salt to keep kids from slipping. So that's one of the more frequent things we see on school buildings is the rusting and eroding of those doors. Oh, I apologize. This one is the window one. We did have a roofing contractor help us out with this portion of the roof. That included going out. They again conducted a very thorough review of all of your building roofs. So their report, I believe, is included back in the appendix as well. Again, we did sort of tried to summarize it as best we can. This one, I think, is one that kind of jumps out when you see the amount of red that shows up. So there are some sections of the high school that have pretty aged roof conditions on them. Also looking at ADA accessibility within your buildings. And again, this is a little bit of a tricky one in terms of this doesn't necessarily mean we have to run out and fix all of the items within the building that show up on this. But it is something that is very valuable for us as a team. And I think Market and Johnson as a team, as we understand going through projects, knowing if we touch certain parts of the building where you are deficient from a handicap accessibility, we do need to fix and improve it if we're doing work in that area. I think just in general too, we do want to kind of continue to work with the district to understand if there are certain challenges that they even see within the buildings that we adjust it. But again, as the buildings have accessible paths into them, you do have accessible toilet fixtures within them. So, but this is kind of really looking at things with a fine tooth comb, if you will. And then at I joked with our team that we make you work to find the cheat code here, but this is, I think, a great graphic at the end of each building as we kind of show an overall summary. So if you kind of want to see how all of the parts and pieces that we just ran through stack up, this document kind of shows it well. And I think the graphic nature of it, some of the items where there's challenges like the roof kind of pop out to you right away. And again, you don't have to be a fancy architect, I think, to understand this. I think most lay people looking at this will kind of understand it. So again, within the document, there is that similar summary for each of the buildings. I'll just kind of quickly flip through. But on the presentation here, now this one actually showed up properly with the colors. Not sure what happened there. As part of the study, we did not, because Herman is such a new building, we did not take a look at Herman. So if you do notice that one missing within the document, we did not conduct a thorough review of that one as much as we did the other ones. All right, so I will pause there for questions.
Any questions from board members? Go for it, Mrs. Lopez.
Regarding the survey that goes out to the community, who is responsible for drafting that? I am grateful that the Board of Education will take a look at that. I'm just curious who.
We worked with school perceptions on that, and they're actually been working with us quite extensively for the last couple months. And we're working collaboratively with them based on this information, based on the financial information and that sort of thing. So all the information that we present tonight will lead to some survey questions and tax impacts and that sort of thing. So we can definitely talk about that at the very end too.
Very good. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Burns Gilbert.
I was just going to say, thanks for teaching me how to read that. That was super helpful. Also, I think, is that document, the 300-page, can we post that? I know sometimes things are internal versus external, but is that something we can post on our website so the community can have a chance to dive deep into those awesome graphs and perspectives there?
Yeah, it's at the discretion of the district. I would say most
Okay.
districts, it's something that, yes, we have no reason to hide from it or, not show it. I think most, if your community wants to see it, yeah, it's welcome information to them.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll post it with the caveat that it's a draft.
Yeah.
As of this was given to the Board of Education on that. And then once the draft comes off, we'll repost that, or actually probably keep them both up there. But yeah, we have a facility assessment page already on our website as well.
Okay. And that might have better conversations on that August 9th then too, if they have some time to
Yep.
digest.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, if there aren't any other questions, if you could flip back to the other presentation. So with that, we again, the next part of that is then addressing other needs within the district. More, and when we say needs on that end, it's the structural needs of the building, or just capital maintenance needs of the buildings. As we looked into the concepts, it's more about solving some of the spatial challenges for each of the buildings. So hopefully we can see this okay up on the screen. I'm not sure how far away that is for your eyes. But starting at south side, what we looked at or proposed for this building is sort of twofold. Number one, obviously the new addition at that building is very nice and serving the district very well. One of the things was, it was if we could kind of bring the rest of the building up to speed with what was done in the new section. So you'll notice the turquoise there is recognizing where we would do finish upgrades, ceilings, flooring, paint, those types of things to the existing building. Potentially looking at doing a little more renovation within the current gymnasium, cafeteria, and kitchen area of the building. And then the red section there would be a proposal to build additional space for classrooms. So we're showing an addition for 4 additional classrooms, as well as a dedicated gymnasium space off to the side. Part of this addition would kind of link up then to the older section of the building. So there would be an internal courtyard there that would kind of create outdoor courtyard space for what is a playground area right now, utilized by again, the younger students within the building. As we were looking at this, another challenge for this building is site circulation. So you'll notice at the top, there's a bunch of yellow, they're supposed to be buses, right? Yellow buses shown. And the idea would be to create a pull-off zone for the buses to get off the street and have a designated area to pull in there diagonally. And we would design that such that they're able to turn out then away without backing up. But again, giving a designated area for buses to hopefully keep them a little more clear from the parent traffic that's existing right now. As we've already kind of started a little bit of in terms of a prioritization for, what some of this work would be, and that bus area, drop off area is kind of, if we were to do a phase one or an immediate need priority, that was something the district leadership felt very strongly should be considered. There's a zoomed in, so. Next, we looked at Meadowview Middle School. This one on the exterior had quite a bit of site considerations that was looked at for this building. One of the ideas was to locate, and north on this one would be, I believe, to the right. So the idea here would be to create a new track and kind of practice level football, soccer field on the south side of the site. We're just showing a four-lane track in this particular case. This is a 400-meter full-size track, and then utilizing some of the additional space on the site on that southeast corner of the site for, again, more practice fields for soccer and football. In the northwest area, would plan for two softball fields. The red dots that you see there would be a small concession and bathroom facility. I didn't mention it, but over by the track area, another small bathroom and storage facility. For the tennis courts, the plan would be to add one additional court to get it to kind of what would be, I think, sectional or regional size for hosting that, as well as making some improvements to get handicap accessibility to the track, because right now it's a little circuitous getting to that for those with mobility needs. Moving to the interior of the building, again, the kind of the blue or turquoise color are a number of different renovation ideas. On the far left, in what was previously the elementary area, that was the elementary library. The idea would be to kind of renovate that space to update what was previously the library into a better use for collaboration and office and smaller group meeting type spaces. Just to the right of that, the tiered seating area would be to pull out the tiered seats or the tiered floor condition there, and then put a permanent wall in to, again, make that space function a little bit better. The space to the opposite side of us with music and band would be some renovation to those areas, expanding the concessions or creating a little bit bigger concessions area and reworking some of the music areas. For the library, which is the lighter color there, the idea would be to, again, make some improvements to that, some furniture upgrades, and just making it a more modern library space. And then the red box down at the bottom would be an expansion of the tech ed area, as well as renovation of tech ed. And then also a new weight and fitness room, basically doubling the size of that. That's currently in a pretty small space, so making it actually suit a good sized group of kids. The final area I left out is the office area. So the idea there would be to, again, renovate that and update that and create more of a true secure entry scenario for the building. And also kind of better identify which door is the front door. I'll admit, the first time I came here, I guessed wrong, 50-50 chance I guessed wrong. So again, just making improvements so that's very clear which entry is, and then also improving the sequence of operations coming in for secure entry. Again, kind of in terms of the interest of, what would be the highest priority need here, it would be that secure entry area and making that improvement to this building. So that, again, that's the kind of shown blown up to the right hand side there. And blown up here as well. The final area then is the high school. Again, we started down the path of looking at some solutions for this building. when we kind of, when I mentioned that the structural consideration came up. So this concept, which we referred to as 2E. So yes, there were many more than this, but this is kind of where we finally got to something that we really liked. The red box that you see on the bottom, or that would be the west side of the school, that would represent an addition for relocating the offices, the cafeteria, and creating additional gymnasium space. Really flipping, I would say, kind of flipping the front door of your building. Right now, again, kind of when you come to the building, I think it's probably a little bit more clear than the middle school where the front door is, but you kind of have a two-sided building. So one of the main focuses of this was to create really the sense of where your entry to your building is and the front door of your building. Within the existing building, then we would update and renovate the art and tech ed area, remove the metal shed that exists for metals and welding, and create a structure more cohesive with the existing building. We'd update the music and auditorium area within the building. I know we've kind of talked about that previously, expanding the seating, expanding the size of the stage. We would actually move choir and band into the current cafeteria space that would be vacated and opened up due to the addition. And then make some additional improvements. The light green area, again, within the older section of the building, is the area that we identified as having that structural concern. So as we looked at this particular option, and the way that when we get to the budgets in a little bit, Market and Johnson actually looked to remove the roof in its entirety for that whole section of the building, as well as some exterior walls associated with that as well, and basically rebuild or reconstruct that area of the building. Also, the other addition that we show again to the far right or the far south would be for improvements to ag and updating and replacing the greenhouse. So before I go to the next option, we just kind of want to point out, while we went through kind of the pricing exercise for this, one of the massive challenges with doing a project of that nature is it's likely going to be much more than a 3-month project where, we have just a summer a lot of times to do work within an existing building. So one of the massive phasing or constructability challenges of this particular option would likely mean we would have to bring in temporary classrooms to house the kids for the time when that particular construction would occur. We did feel it was important, though, to kind of go through this exercise and understand, I think, when you look at new versus fixing up what you have, I think it's important to understand that difference. But I would say in terms of constructability and practicality of pulling a roof off and rebuilding it, it would be a very challenging project. So with that knowledge, we did reconfigure then the concept that we were looking at. So this was titled 2G. We didn't like 2F. So this one was titled 2G. And in this particular case, there is an addition to the upper left or northeast of the site, kind of where your horseshoe drop off is at the front of the building currently. The idea there is, since we are kind of flipping the front door for your building, that kind of became a great logical location to build a new classroom wing, which would replace the one we would take down in the center section of the building. So the idea there is, from a constructability, is we can build that section of the building with, there'll be some impact to the site and to the kids, but we can kind of build that and not really affect the day-to-day operations of the school. We move the kids in there, and that opens up the opportunity then to remove and take down the center section of the building. Once we take down the center section of the building, it does work really well from a site perspective. I didn't mention this, but as we looked at the previous option, we are moving quite a bit west, and it would have actually made us shift the track a little bit further to the west. In this particular scenario, we're able to kind of fill in the red parts into the center section of the building and really not impact the location of the current track. All the parts and pieces that I described in the previous option exist in this one. We would be building a new office space, new cafeteria space, new gymnasium space, weight and fitness egg space in this option. And then again, making the improvements to tech ed and band and music and auditorium and so forth. As we started to look at this process, again, much like we looked at the other ones, is there kind of a phase 1, phase 2 version of this? That's a pretty significant project, a pretty significant endeavor. So this option up here it really would work towards that final version that I just showed, but we think this could be a phase 1 consideration the district could look at. So again, building that classroom addition, building a new office and area out in front. So again, kind of changing the front of the building. And then and also addressing tech ed in terms of the kind of the additions that would tech ed and ag as part of the additions here. And then essentially you'd kind of be left with a, potentially a green courtyard area within the center section, which would then be removed. So again, we think this could be a logical phase 1. And then obviously phase 2 coming at a later time potentially. So we will pause here for questions.
Questions or comments from board members? Go ahead, Mr. Russ.
Before we get into the questions, once again, I want to reiterate, this is all preliminary. This is all brainstormed. It was nice to get into the room and challenge each other to say, nope, this is what it is, and bounce ideas back and forth. The South Side addition, that would be something that, why were we looking at that right now? Potentially. If the state would go to all day 4K, all day, and get reimbursed for it, we may not have the ability to do that because of our facility. A lot of people have talked about daycares. That might be an opportunity there as well. So there's a lot of options. And once again, we went through 3 sites. It doesn't mean that all the other sites are off limits by any means, but that's what we focused on with what we know based on the report, based on what we can, forecast for moving forward. So, and for Meadowview, the secured entrance is the other, the 2 biggest one on South Side and Meadowview are that safety aspect with the buses at South Side and then that secured entrance on Meadowview.
Questions from board members? Go ahead, Mrs. Lopez.
Thank you. So you reviewed these schools, but what about the Montessori school? Is there something in this document that addresses Montessori?
The document in the binder documents the facility assessment of that. We did brainstorm, what about expansions of Montessori? We did talk about that. However, we did not bring that forward tonight because we're not sure if that's going to move forward or anything like that. But those are sorts of things that, hey, we want to do this, this, and this. We did talk about Montessori, but the facility report does go into Montessori quite extensively, and you'll see some red.
Does Montessori, is it considered to have a secure entrance?
It is considered to have a secure entrance, yes. Is it the best secure entrance? Like a lot of our buildings, maybe not the best, but it is a secure entrance.
Other questions or comments from board members? Go ahead. Yeah. Oh, you go.
Oh, okay, thank you. In the 2E version of Sparta High School, how does that version impact parking? It looks to me like it's taking quite a bit of the parking away, but I might not have a good visual.
Yep. And I would say not that we abandoned this scheme, but we did kind of stop development a little bit on this once we learned of some of the challenges. What we tried to do in all of these options was to keep you at parking neutral, meaning at least as many parking spots as you currently have, or try to get a little bit better. We also recognize, again, parent drop off and pickup and separation of buses. So I would say option the option 2G identifies some of those things a little bit better. Option 2G actually got us a little bit more parking at the end of the day as well. So that was the overall goal, was to try to be neutral as well. Again, I don't believe it shows up on this option, but what we looked at was where the current tennis courts are to utilize that as additional parking as well. So that again does show up on 2G.
It'd be
Yep.
very similar to 2G.
Yep.
But in 2E, everyone else but me, I guess, has to actually move the track to the west. In
That-
2G, there is no track needed to be moved. So the plan in this concept would be the tennis courts become parking.
Thank you.
Mr. Burns Gilbert, did you have something? I can go quick, or unless
go.
you're ready.
I was just gonna ask,
Go for it.
and maybe it's just because if we can get these pictures blown up or zoomed in so I can see some of that a little bit better, but like the high school loading dock, like that was one question I had, and being back there, I think I saw the cafeteria would in 2G would switch down to that west side there. Can you talk about how that would be upgraded and safer for our folks?
Sure. So in this particular case, as you mentioned, the cafeteria, kitchen, and actually the loading dock would be located, I'll say in the lower right-hand corner of the red there, or the far red part of the building. And so we would create a new loading dock, kind of, I would say, more on the back side of the building. And the current loading dock would not be utilized for that anymore. The thought there actually with that could be utilized for some of the special ed bus drop off area, was the thought for kind of that little paved area currently.
That was my next question of where the bus drop off would be in that G.
Yep. So in G, the bus drop off, I'll say the day-to-day buses would be along the south side or the right-hand side of the building. They would enter and leave on the east. And then the cars would kind of come along the west or bottom side between the building and the track, and then loop it back out there.
Thank you.
And
I would
fully-
say, oh, go ahead.
I would just say fully recognizing, that's going to be something we're going to have to continue to improve. I don't know if any of us loved this particular solution, but I think in terms of kind of having a solution to budget and having a solution and then having a budget to work with, we felt that this was kind of the best we could do given the current circumstances.
Go ahead.
And to zoom in, if you're in the Google Slides, you download it as a PDF. And it may take a little bit of time, but then you can zoom in and zoom out as you need and move it around. That's what I just did, and it seemed to work okay.
Another thing for us to remember, from a board standpoint, so a couple of nice things about 2G is, again, you take a look at how it affects our students' education while they're going through the construction process. And 2G is a great opportunity to build and create that northeast corner and not affect our students that considerably. The other really, really nice aspect is it takes care of the area that's the oldest within our high school, right? So that entire southwest section, we're getting rid of it, we're upgrading it, we're being as efficient as we possibly can with all of the space, and again, how that affects our students, so in all of the different, which you guys put together some amazing concepts, by the way. So thank you for that. The board here is only seeing 2 of them, but some really, really good ones. But this 2G jumped out to us, Mr. Russ and I, at least, as being the most efficient and least effective least intrusive on the students and staff. Any other questions, comments from board? Go ahead, Mr. Burns Gilbert.
If I'm looking at that 2G correctly, did you talk about the second floor of that addition? That's part of that draft?
It is. Yeah, I apologize. I was actually thinking I didn't mention that as well. So yes, that northeast addition for classrooms would be a 2-story addition. Yep.
So to visualize, in the 1960 edition, you have our special education. We have our family consumer science, we have English, we have social studies, we have business marketing in the library in general, and weight room and that sort of thing. So the idea or the concept would be to transfer, in theory, those classrooms over there, redesign them. I can tell you our special education room that we have now really needs some upgrades as well. So, and our kitchens at SHS right now, we have one kitchen, and that is scheduling and the number of kids who want to participate in those classes. Our business classes, do we want to redo? So building new really defines what we want to do. If we were just take off the walls or take off the roof in the exterior walls in the 50, which is fine, it's an option. I'm not saying it's bad, but we're really confined. They're not tearing down everything. So we're really confined to that envelope there for the most part. So building new would give us an opportunity to be innovative and really be creative in what we want the education to be moving forward.
Another really nice aspect of phase 2 on 2G, when we take a look at our performing arts, our CTE, again, we can move those students around, the staff around without affecting their education and their opportunities, because the cafeteria and everything else will be built. And then now they can start working on that music section, and possibly blowing out the back of the auditorium stage or whatever, if we decided on that concept. But again, not being intrusive on the student's education. All right.
One more
Oh, yeah,
question.
go ahead,
Sorry.
please.
Okay, so you mentioned the two words, weight room, I think, Mr. Ross. What would happen with that current weight room in the basement of the school? Does that go away and it's brought up and,
That is a locker room.
oh, locker room,
The
I'm
locker
sorry.
room. So
you're
the
right.
locker rooms, we
Absolutely.
would, part of this design is that we would create new locker rooms that are ADA accessible and that sort of thing on the first floor. And we would use that as storage.
Okay, that's right. You're
Okay.
right, locker room, not
Mhm.
weight room.
Mr. Blaha, okay with getting rid of that locker room?
I may have to twist his arm.
Yeah, I see he's not here right now, but yeah,
Interviewing for volleyball.
perfect. All right, go for it.
All right. I assume you've all jumped to the bottom line and no defibrillators are taken out yet, so everybody's good. So, in all school projects and all the partners that you have working with you now, the wants and the needs always kind of add up to a really big number. And so part of the challenge becomes, how do you pare that down? And that's kind of the process that we went through. So from a budget standpoint, there's 300 pages of facility study. There's all kinds of details, right? But from a drawing standpoint of options, we're really, really high level, right? So our budgets are reflective of that. So what we did here is kind of price out both phase 1 and phase 2. And it's really small print there. But what you can see is the high school phase 1 numbers broken down. The other 2 school projects, phase 1 broken down to kind of come up with a subtotal of potential construction costs. And we did the same thing for phase 2 as well. And then we broke it down. The next section of the budget is broken down into escalation, contingencies and stuff like that. Because even if you said, let's go today, you still got to go to a future referendum, which takes time. You have to draw it, which takes time. And then by the time you're bidding it. So the worst thing that you can do when you start doing these things is start with the unrealistic number. So we try to project out future escalation costs. We have estimated contingency in there because again, we're really kind of, budgeting these things off of 1-page drawings right now. So there's things in there that none of us know that are going to pop up. And then there's construction contingency. So although we feel like all the costs are in line with, our past history and budgets that we're doing right now, bids we're doing right now, we're trying to project what it's going to be out in a couple of years from now. So that's what this section of that budget creates. And then we've kind of got the third section of the budget, which often gets overlooked in projects, is kind of all the other items, FF&E, furniture, fixtures, equipment, all those types of things that get incorporated into a potential referendum so that you've got a total all-in cost. So you can see what we came up with for phase 1. I'll go back actually. So on phase 2, what we did do, if you look at the market escalation, we've got in phase 1, we've got a 2-year escalation. Because again, if you went to referendum in the spring, by the time you bid it, it's good and start construction, it's gonna be roughly probably 2-year window. So that's why we try to bring that up to what would be today's dollars when we broke ground. So we carried that over for phase 2, but we know phase 2, if you didn't go to referendum right away for everything, that would be future. So we just picked the arbitrary number and said, what would that look like 5 years, afterwards? So we added another 3 years of escalation in there. So there's a line item for there, trying to kind of give you a really good big picture idea of what costs would be today, today being a future referendum, and then, a couple years down the road type of thing. So and then again, that wraps up all into a potential price by phase. And like I think we've all mentioned multiple times, this is just the very, very preliminary starting point. Part of it comes back to you take all those wants and needs, and Brian's going to talk a little bit about tax impacts. And so when we look at that big wants and needs, and then we look at where your tax impact is, and Brian's got really good news about how financially, fiscally responsible you guys have been. And you guys have an advantage that most districts don't have, to be able to invest in your schools without having a major tax impact. And not a lot of school districts have that opportunity. So then we said, okay, you got the whole thing. What would it take to kind of get down to a smaller number, maybe closer to where that tax impact is really minimal, and kind of start looking at options there. And again, like we've said, this is just one of potentially many options that we'll get to. So a good starting point. I think you've mentioned the study itself is really, really well done by Bray. I think the concepts that we've all gone through multiple times is good. And again, it's just a starting point. So questions on budget?
Questions or comments from board members?
The one comment that I have, these spreadsheets there do not include if there's any upgrades to Montessori. When you go through the facility report, there's that. So we're still working through those as we come to. So those will also have items as well when you go through the report. How much is a Montessori roof, if that's bad? I'm pretty sure that it's bad. I shouldn't say bad. In a red condition that needs to be upgraded. Those sorts of things. That's also, we're working through these as the reports starting to come in and that sort of thing. So the costs, preliminary costs, are based on the designs that Clint mentioned, and excavation and moving, demolition, and everything like that.
Thank you, Mr. Russ. Mrs. Lopez, did you have a question?
Yes, once again, I might not say it correctly, but how do I even ask? I'm looking at these numbers for Sparta High School. And I'm wondering, what is the cost of a brand new school compared to these?
That's a great question. And we figured it was going to come.
Yeah.
It's a big number. I mean, we have got the study, and we probably should pull that concept up. But if you kind of took the same space need, it's much higher. It'd be relevant of combining both phase 1, phase 2 plus some. So I don't remember the number off the top of your head.
Yeah, it was
I think it's about 145 million.
Yeah.
I think is the number. So
million.
yes,
Not 145,000.
Yes.
So
if that was it, I'd sell.
yes,
Yeah.
so it's 140, it's approximately, it's approximately 145 million, and that is just for SHS. That
That
does
is
not
just the high school.
include the when you go into the other ones that we need.
That was what I was asking. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you just, so Herman 4 years ago was 28 million. Why is that high school number for a new school so much larger?
Yeah.
All the different, I can make assumptions, but.
Yeah. Well, one, in general, high school construction is typically a little bit more expensive than elementary school construction. But I would say that if you look at construction costs today compared to when you built Herman, it's double, if not more than that. It's the inflation, construction inflation has just been insane over the last several years. It's just kind of like you see everywhere else. But give you a standpoint, new hospital construction. We built a new Toma hospital. I would tell a new hospital is $350 a square foot all day long, any day, and we could build a great new hospital. Today, it's probably $800 a square foot. And that be maybe kind of pushing it kind of thing. So the construction has just gone through the roof over the last, right during the pandemic. And then after all the labor shortages and then the supply chain challenges, it jacked it all up. It's stabilized now. For a long time, the state of Wisconsin was using 16% a year inflation. So you did that 2.5 years in a row. I mean, you got 50% right there. So it's starting to subside. Who knows what the crystal ball will look like a couple of years from now if it starts coming down. Do I think we're ever going to see Herman Elementary School type costs ever again? No. Do I think it will, stabilize and maybe get more aggressive than what it is today? Potentially, but that's a crystal ball that I don't think any of us have right now, but it's definitely crazy to think. I mean, if you go build a house today compared to 4 years from now or 4 years ago, it's crazy.
Other questions or comments from board members?
Matt did bring up a good point too on the new high school. If you did do a new high school, that number that we threw out there just kind of off the cuff, that has nothing to do then with what you do with the existing high school, right? So that number doesn't have tearing that down or repurposing it for anything else or whatever. So that was just kind of build a new school out in a greenfield site. So.
All right, go ahead. You can keep
All right.
rolling then.
Where am I aiming? There we go. Good evening. So this isn't really a school finance 101 because I would have 20 more pages if I was going to do that. This is more focused on just the capital financing portion of your total budget. And so with that, just like building a new home or, renovations to your home, you may go out and get a mortgage or a second mortgage to finance that. So the school district issues municipal bonds to raise the funds to then pay the contractors and project costs during the construction. So most of my presentations start with a view of where interest rates are, just to have an idea of what school finance rates are relative to what we hear in the local press, which is going to be more about CD rates and mortgage rates and personal consumer loan rates. So this chart, the bottom chart, is a 30-year trend in where interest rates have been in the market. This is a general market movement, just to give you a quick visual. The upper right is kind of the last year. But I use this for a few reasons. One is to highlight how abnormally low interest rates had been during COVID. That low point that you see on the 30-year chart is effectively the lowest. You'd have to go back to World War II before you got anywhere close to those types of rates. If you look at where 2018 was, which is the only debt issue you still have outstanding as a school district, which was related to the Herman construction, that was in 2018, and it's right around or just below the line that I drew across, kind of where current rates are. So you're in a similar time frame or interest rate environment to where you were when you financed the bulk of that 2018 referendum. So yes, have rates been rising? Yes, because they were abnormally and historically low. And the rate we hear a lot about in the paper is the Federal Reserve rate, which is it's an overnight lending rate. So it's a very short rate. So it doesn't, that movement, which they are likely going to raise again next week at their meeting, does not move lockstep with your borrowing rates as a school district. So it's something that we don't talk about all that often. It's not really, until you're in the market, it doesn't really matter, right? But I wanted to give you that background because as you start to think about, wow, whatever scope we decide to move forward with out of, a survey, we're going to have to finance that at some point in the future. And what are rates? So that's one of the inputs to the summary page that we created for a range of scope, right? So this page is really just different intervals of amounts, not specifically tied to any of the, phase one, phase two at any certain building. It's really just, if you borrowed 72 million, with how you've been aggressively paying down the 2018 debt, you can structure in up to 72 million using what I'm currently using as an interest rate is a 5.25% to a 5.5%. That interest rate over a 21 repayment, 22 year repayment period is going to add up, right? So that's an important variable. I lead with that assumption, and all the assumptions are at the bottom of this page, but I lead with that assumption because the spring referenda that were just authorized in 23, we've been financing a lot of that in the last couple of months, and those rates have finalized right around 4 to 4.25. So this planning estimate, and I'll use the same disclosure that everybody else has used. These will continue to be updated as we get new information over the next year. But we're using an estimate that's higher than, roughly a 1 percentage point higher than where we currently are, what the current market is. And so as you look at the summary, staying focused on the 73 million, you'd say, how can that be, right? Like, why can you borrow 73 million plus the interest and pay it back in within the budget at, this without increasing the mill rate? It's because you've been aggressively paying down the 2018 debt and saving interest costs on that debt, effectively positioning the district to be able to address whatever's next on the capital horizon. So within this year's budget that you're working on, the 23-24 budget, there's an amount that's built in to pay down debt again, which would then shorten your final payoff of that 2018 debt to 2032. So you have about 9 years left, actually 8 years after this fiscal year. We are layering in the new 73 million around those final 8 years and then after it, right? So we're using the step down in the existing debt that was authorized via the 2018 referendum and the room that would be freed up in the budget within the levy to make the new payments on the new 73 million. So like I said, that number doesn't really tie to anything other than us backing into how much could fit within that step down in payment from your 23-24 budget that you're working on. So then from there, we just did different increment amounts that arrived at 25-cent mill rate increases. So if you look from column 1 to column 2, you can add about 9 million and an additional 9 million over the 73 million, so 82 million. And the estimated mill rate impact of that additional debt levy is 25 cents per $1,000 of property value. And then the little home graphic shows you what that is for, 3 different property value amounts, $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 property. And then that math stays relatively consistent. There's obviously going to be a little fluctuation, and we'll fine tune this as you fine tune your scope. But you move over an additional 9 million, takes you to 50 cents. So 91 million, additional 9 million takes you to 75 cents. So it's 100 million. And then an additional 9 million takes you to $1. So then what we did was we went to the kind of I think it was an all-in number is what we were trying to do at 150 to say, what would that look like if you were to do phase 1 and phase 2 or the new high school without doing some of the other facility items, right? So whatever 150 would get you, right? And that's approximately $2. So the some of the things that play that helps the district here versus neighboring districts or other districts across the state is that your equalization aid is based on property value per student, like every district says. But your position within the formula, you currently receive an additional 40 cents on every dollar that you spend, additional dollar that you spend. So that weighs heavily in here because you're reimbursing. So if you do 100 million of expenditure over that time period and you get 40% back over that time period, that's their $40 million of the total project cost is coming from that state aid formula. Okay. Which has been the case for this district for the last 3 decades, right? Since the advent of the equalization aid formula, but it's that reality of your aid position, along with the stagnant operational revenue raising ability, has been a key ingredient as to why you've been able to pay down this debt aggressively, position yourself to layer in some future capital, and stay at or below the state average for K-12 mill rates. So this year, I think you were 743-ish, something like that, right? 734, but statewide average is 770. And if I go back in previous years, you've been consistently under, either at the state average or under the state average for K through 12 mill rates. So financially, you've been taking what the biennial budgets have been giving you, figuring out how to balance the operational budget. And then, managing the total school levy and paying down debt within that construct. Right. So that's how this can be what many districts would look at those mill rate increases, especially relative to the scope of work that you could accomplish, and say that it's relatively manageable from an additional mill rate standpoint. Especially since, I just think it was 4 years ago or so, Leah, that the total school mill rate was over 9 at that point. So, the fact you're at 734 now, you're $2 lower than where you were. So if you layer in any one of these numbers, you're going back up, but it's kind of within accomplishing long-term projects for the district. So other kind of key takeaways, I gave you the 25 cents per 9 million. You'll see that middle bold sentence that says, note, for every additional 1 million, the mill rate impact increases about 3 cents. So as you're kind of trading out projects on the list that Jason went through, or, like thinking about scope over time, a million's easier. 3 cents per million's easier to add or subtract as you go. Another consideration is the total value of all of the community property within the school district boundaries. So as of 22, so last year, the total school-wide property values was 632 million. Couple reasons that's important is that is what you're dividing the payment over the levy amount over that base to collect the tax to then pay back the bonds, right? So the bigger that base, the better, and the lower the mill rate. We're assuming 1% growth. The district's grown, I think last year was double digits, but we're trying to be conservative because I don't think double digits is repeatable or sustainable. So, we're using 1%, probably too conservative, right? In this illustration, but we'll see. So if we're too conservative, these mill rates actually go down. The other consideration of the $1.6 billion is statutorily, school districts, K through 12 school districts have a debt limit. So the limit in under state law is 10% of your equalized value. So that number, using the $1.6 billion, is about 163 million. Okay. And so, as I said, you've been paying down your debt, and after 24, kind of based on the preliminary budgeting, you're going to have about 13 million left after your payments in 24. So that means you have about 150 left of capacity, but in the next 2 months, we will get the 23 value, which likely is going to be higher than the $1.6 billion. There's likely going to be some growth this year. So as that number grows, so does your capacity. So I just bring it up because as you're narrowing into your scope of work, that ability to borrow will be part of how we phase in the borrowing and implement the financing plan. So I've already talked about the 40% reimbursement on the tertiary, and then I've talked about how this increase is taking into account that you're currently paying for debt now, and that's stepping down. So we're using some of that step down to offset the new increase. So it's how much are you paying now for debt relative to what would you pay after you layer in one of these? So it's, you know, the same type of portion of your total school mill rate. So any questions on that?
Questions or comments from board members? Colin, that is quite the smile.
All good.
That was super helpful. Thank you. I think if we could get more slides, because you said a lot of things that were not on the, like the explanations were super helpful. That would be super helpful to share with the community, right? Going into those August 9th conversations, because I think that'll be a sticking point to educate ourselves and everyone on of like, how can we pay for this and why? It's not that we're squirreling away money and we have all the, why is that not going to salaries and people, right? Like, and so I think that's, that helped me understand that better. So I just wanted to echo that to be able to show that in different ways for our community as we keep having these conversations. Can you, I might have missed it. Did you touch on one of those assumptions I'm reading says, this assumes we also pass a 750,000 operating referendum. Is that part of that
Yes.
process? Can you talk about
so
what that would look like?
You're right. I did not, as it's small print on mine too. So yeah, no. So in the financing plans, you know, again, within the levy structure of the 23-24 budget, it's stepping down. And so part of the assumptions we used was that at some point you may need to come back for a renewal of the 750 operational that you had prior to the April 22 referendum that failed. So we wanted to put some of that step down in the levy set aside for that potential need for an operational. If you don't have a need for an operational as we work our way through the next couple budgets, then that helps to offset this or pay down the debt quicker. You know, one of the two, we will use that 750 towards that versus operational. So it's a great question. I did step through that and skipped over it.
And that would still get the 40% back if
Yes.
we, right? Okay.
And one of the reasons, as it was illustrated earlier, we've started this process a while ago. And when Ms. Hauser and I start talking with Brian about, you know, what do we need to do it? We just can't call up him and say, hey, this is what we want. This is a lot of time and processing and that sort of thing. So we asked for that prior to the state budget, prior to really anything, knowing anything final. So we threw that $750,000 in, as Brian said, because we used to have that 750,000 just as a talking point. Do we need it? That's up for debate in another, we can do it today too, but.
And to piggyback off of what Colin was saying, and I don't know if Brian, you'd be able to answer this, but in working with Bray and Market and Johnson, what opportunities do we have through you to be able to communicate to our community and our constituents, the process and what is coming from this situation or scenario?
So community education, is that? what we're
Exactly.
talking about?
That,
Yeah,
yeah,
let's
I'm
go
asking.
ahead. I'm a part of that, but I'm not the one
So
leading.
what you would provide from a community education standpoint is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, so as part of this team, we will have those community engagement discussions, and I would go back to those slides. I would have more of the educational kind of, and it would be pictures. You know, this would probably be the most detailed page, the one you're looking at. But I would have a pie chart of your borrowing capacity. I'd have a bar chart of your debt stepping down, and you know where, you know, visualize how that levy room occurs, right? So I would do those types of things, answer questions to community groups as needed across, you know, along the way. But that I would be a partner in that. Am I answering your
That's
specific
exactly
question?
what I
Okay.
wanted you to say. I was
Yeah.
hoping that's what it was. And in talking with Mr. Russ, that was my understanding of it, but I wanted the rest of the board to hear that as well. So we're not on an island here where we have a full team that's behind us with the process.
And a lot of the education is going to come. We did a very nice, Ms. Hauser did a very nice job last year of educating a lot of people before the annual meeting about what is it, why can we borrow $73 million without, is that free? It's not free. You know, so really start to dive into with charts and graphs to say, this is how we've set ourselves up for this. And it'll lead very nicely into the annual meeting in October.
Other questions or comments from board members?
So,
Go ahead,
yeah,
Mr. Wells.
I'd like to see something, I want to look towards an like a small progress approach too on this. Something where we could cusp that 2-tier funding just with minimum payments on a project like this. I'd like to see where that's at. I know with the ceiling going up by $1,000, I'm sure the tier 2 level will hit somewhere around $1,000 more than what it is currently. So I'm projecting with what we're at, about a 2 million a year, a 2.1 million a year minimum payment. I want to see where that's at. And that's where my target would be. Based on the deafening silence in the room, something tells me I said something.
Well, no, you didn't say anything wrong. I just want to make sure that we're all understanding so that we can get you the right information that
Yep.
you're looking for. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. We can talk as well. Did you understand that off the top?
No.
It's
No,
okay.
that's
So
okay.
is that for me or is that for the project cost? Are you talking about phase 1, phase 2?
Yeah, so what I want to see is something where our minimum payments just hit that 2-tier level of our revenue formula, where we get that 80% reimbursement. So I don't think based on that 73 million is where that number's at, just because we'd be hitting into that tier 3, that 40% that you were talking about before. I want to know what that number is, because that's the target that's in my head as of now. And I just want to know where that number is as
So
of.
in the equalization aid formula,
Mhm.
yeah, so right, your second, your primary, which is the first 1,000 you spend per student, is at 73%. Your the next 10,000 you spend per student, which, this is kind of the DPI's current estimate, is 74.5% reimbursement. And then that everything over that 11,210 per student is at the 40% that we're using here. So we are assuming that all of the new payment is at the 40%. Like any additional amount over and above what you're currently paying, because you're currently into the tertiary level, you're currently spending into that 40% tier. So we're basically saying if anything additional over now is going to be at that tertiary tier. If the formula changes, and allows more room in the secondary, that would mean more aid would come in than the 40%. But we were just, because the current spending and the current budget from building off of 22-23 has you into the third tier, that's why we ran it at a 40%.
Yep.
Brian, I've talked before about the secondary and tertiary tier, but could you maybe reiterate that even though the tertiary tier is at the 40%, that's not a bad thing? Can you kind of just talk about how the equalization aid formula works for us in Sparta and how, if it's a step down, is that a negative, or can you kind of just?
The fact is that 40% is among the highest of all of my clients across the state. So the fact you get 40% is outstanding. There are clients of mine in other parts of the state that are, they actually give back 40%. Like they're negative. So every dollar costs them $1.40 locally in tax versus every dollar costing 60 cents per dollar. Part of the answer to your question, Leah, is that your current aid reimbursement based on the DPI July estimate, which will change, has 70% of your school expenses are reimbursed by the aid formula. And that means 30% is paid locally. So for each dollar that gets aided into the 40% level, that just starts to blend down that 70 to 69 to 68 to 67, so it's not a negative thing, it's actually a positive thing that you're receiving 40% additional aid. And it doesn't change the fact you get the first tier of aid and the second tier of aid, you're maximizing that aid. It just means that the blended total aid reimbursement starts to get blended down a little bit, incrementally, depending on how much you're spending in that third level. Does that help? Am I explaining the question? Okay.
Well, and I was going to say, Mr. Russ, if you can work with Mr. Wells and the architects, just to make sure that his answer, his questions are answered, we'd want to make sure that you're comfortable with where the information is. I'd also point out to board members that I just forwarded on to your emails, the mill rates for all of our area school districts, just to show where we are currently and where we could potentially be in correlation to our surrounding districts. Just it's a lot of good information there as well. Any other questions or comments from board members? Yes, yep, there is. All right, go ahead.
Just real quick as a wrap up, just a reminder, again, we kind of have two opportunities coming up where we will have the opportunity to educate all parts of this to the community. There will be the soup with the soup on August 9th. We'll make sure we bring, more information, I guess, specific to the finances, because we will have a little bit more time with that group that evening. And then obviously the survey, and I would say School Perceptions does a pretty amazing job of conveying very difficult information in a simple format that, again, hopefully someone that doesn't understand school finance can understand how it's impacting them.
Clint, can you talk a little bit more about that survey? And I know Ms. Lopez talked about the survey before about, maybe what we're trying to get out of that survey and, the story that we're trying to show and that sort of thing.
Sure. I think the one thing is it's, I think School Perceptions tells a nice story about one of their clients said, this really isn't a survey. It's almost an informational newsletter, because you really are educating. You're conveying your need. You're conveying a solution to that need. And then you're conveying a cost, both in terms of the project cost and what it costs to the taxpayers. We're not sure which route the survey is going to go. Again, part of the process is making sure we set it up to that you get good data. People need to understand what they're answering and what you're asking. And so that's one of the main goals, is that you're getting good, solid data. This survey goes out again to every single mailbox. It gets mailed out in paper form with alphanumeric code. So you can't have the high school principal stuffing the ballot box with a new high school scenario or however it is. People can either answer it in paper form or digitally online, again, using that code. So again, it's a highly predictive tool. We continue to see it referendum cycle over and over again, that good survey results, listening to the survey results and following through on that generally leads to, if they show success, generally leads to districts having success.
Yeah, and I'd like to just thank all of you and your team for this document, this facilities assessment. This facility study is phenomenal. So we really appreciate that. It helps us in our decision-making process. The one thing I was going to ask the board members, is there anything that's not in the study that you would like more information on? Whether it would be, I know we've talked about different opportunities or we've talked about locker room aspects. We've talked about daycare aspects. We've talked about Montessori and potentially adding that. Is there anything specifically the board would like to see from Bray, Market, and Johnson and administration? Go ahead, Mr. Bruns-Gilbert. Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a couple kind of wrap up thoughts to leave. So that was perfect. It's like you read my mind. I think one question was to, and whether that's to us or to everybody, but definitely in advance to before that August 9th, I think having that all in actual value, including Montessori, including Maplewood, I think that would be a helpful reference point for everybody to kind of work around some of those pieces. I was kind of hoping to see some of those recommendations too, like, is Maplewood worth keeping? Like, would those additions be district offices and some of those, whether it's the high school or Meadowview, right? Like some of those upgrades too. So I don't know if that was part of the conversations to this point, but that's kind of thinking district wide, asking some of those questions of, is it worth it to just build a new school? Like also some of the upgrades that will come with some of our other aging buildings that do we maintain, do we upgrade here now through this process to, save down the road? Those are thoughts going through my head that I didn't necessarily hear. And I know I saw Montessori Maplewood in this, so that'll help having some more time to digest. So all in piece, I really think just want to advocate too for that daycare idea. I think having some numbers around there, whether that's in the school perception survey or before, if that hasn't been part of the conversations yet, I think just from living through this right now, that's a huge community need. I think it'll help our employees or help our neighbors, right? Especially with, I'm not sure where budget is, but some of the more in-home support from the state going away, I think was part of that. So I think that will interest, feasibility, however that's framed in the survey. I think that'll also be important to weigh in as we're mapping this out for the next decades, right? If this goes correctly and everything, people support the different ideas. One question. So I asked those already. One question I had, so two questions that the last two that I had down here. One was, do we know or are we able to project any additional, I think you talked about the FFE costs, staffing costs, like maintenance, facilities. I mean, people to staff away, like some of those layers that come with adding facilities that don't exist or upgrading to in ways that we haven't had that reality before. So that was where my head was going. Maybe that's more district conversations there. About some of those pieces, because if we build it, then what, right? Like some of those after pieces beyond kind of the furniture and the physical pieces that will then be more operating ongoing costs that we would assume out of these decisions. And then the last question, maybe I should scroll down. Yeah. Oh, sorry. There's more. The last one was just wanting to explore what collaboration opportunities. I think Tony mentioned a little bit about like some of the community education pieces. But I was thinking more along the lines of, I saw in some of these like replace original water services. I just got something in the mail from the city about them, like looking at that from the city of Sparta. And so I'm wondering that Parks and Rec collaborations, like I'm wondering how some of those opportunities and beyond, right, might be able to either reduce that all in, right, some of those totals or help kind of be part of that community education process, whether that's the school perception survey or again, what precedents exist there too. But that's kind of where my head's going of how often our facilities are used by everybody. How can we include more people in that conversation as early as we can, if that's not already been vetted and outreach there. So, and that brings me to my last question. So I'm done. I yield.
The other thing I was going to say, Mr. Russ, correct me if I'm wrong. I tried to zoom in to see what the verbiage was, but were we looking at having admin at the high school with that the 2G? I can't remember.
No, we weren't. Maybe but that did not make that idea. Not to say that we could not add admin there. One thing is in 2G is a boardroom.
It is in there.
It's
Yeah,
in there.
I remembered seeing both of those, so I couldn't
Yep.
remember. Okay.
Once again, it goes back to, Mr. Burns Gilbert, you mentioned all in. Those are sorts of the discussions, especially coming out of Soup with Soup. What does all in mean? Doesn't mean, adding into this, doesn't mean this. Do we want to reduce a building, for example? Those are the conversations that we're looking to have, starting on the 9th. Not starting, we've had those discussions already, but really get those input. What does all in mean to different stakeholders? And your point about the survey, hey, what does that all in mean? Working with school perceptions, that's the information that we can give them and say, what is the community perception on what is our uses? Some school districts have the walking track above their gym for community use, daycare and that sort of thing. So those are the things that we can start to include, but please know they would come with additional cost.
And with that, Mr. Russ, then I guess I would ask to maybe see a concept where we have admin and potentially sales at the high schools, or to look at from an efficiency standpoint for our constituents, our taxpayers, to look at the reduction of Maplewood potentially, and to see where that would be housed then and how that would look.
No problem. I would say not a problem, but we'll look into
No,
it.
absolutely. That's great. Go ahead, Mr. Burns Gilbert.
That made me think of another question I forgot to write down. Would the funds for this hypothetical referendum, right, would we be able to use that on like our long range capital plan list and things that we had been paying out of like Fund 46 too? Would those fall in, or would they have to be part of what's in this book? Does that make sense?
It all depends on how the question is worded on the referendum, and goes to the education side. And I'll talk at the end about a referendum before we, to talk about if that's the case. But yeah, the referendum questions are very specific to X, Y, and Z. The Herman referendum, for example, anything that was attached to Herman, I don't want to say anything, but that was, associated with Herman, we could use those funds for. If we needed a new hot water heater at SHS, we can't dive into those funds. That would be coming out of our Fund 10 or Fund 46, assuming that it's on the long range plan.
Further questions or comments from board members? Mr. Russ?
So before, and I just want to say thank you again. And anyone else has any last minute comments or anything before I talk a little bit about potential, what we're planning on doing next steps and maybe some quick referendum information.
Yeah, just real quick, education, community education has been brought up a couple of times with Baird. I just know that as we progress, and it's a huge if, but if you go to referendum, our team and Bray's team and Baird, but we'll help provide all the graphs. So we got mailers and social media posts and videos and all that type of thing to help communicate everything to the community. Our team will help put all that together for you guys and walk you through it. So the burden is really not on you. The burden is for you guys to be the messenger of it, but we're really there to help support and give you all that tools to get out to the community, mailers and backpack flyers and all that kind of good stuff. So
Ms. Hauser, how does that sound? Okay, good. Yeah, perfect. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Russ.
So, to wrap up, we talked a lot about today, and those listening in attendance and on the World Wide Web, if you have further questions, please reach out to me, Ms. Hauser, administrator, because a lot of these concepts are the first time that, it is the first time that a lot of people have seen them. So talk to the building principals. They have not been really invested that much. They've been in the loop and that sort of thing, about, tell us the story about, why do you think is this? What does education look like? So really encourage everyone to ask those questions, to get that information. And the more we can show our story and show the need, the more we believe it will support. Referendum, the next chance for referendum is April of 2024. And there's a lot between now and then, but by statute, the board will have to decide to go to a referendum in January at the latest. So that's kind of the timeline. All of this information and all these monies are outside of our regular Fund 10. So the only way to fund these would be going to the voters for a possible referendum of some kind. So the survey will help craft that. When we did Herman, we did the survey, we got that out, we did this. The survey showed support for Herman and what we did, and we passed it. So, and it showed the story. So we'll continue that process. And as Clint said, the survey is very valuable because if they follow results, they've had a lot of success. So the board has to make the decision no later than January, at some point in January. I don't have that specific date yet. But so there's a lot of work and a lot of communication, a lot of questions, Q&A, and a lot of engagement opportunities that we'll have.
Thank you for that, Mr. Russ. Finally, any further questions from board members at this time? Thank you again. We very much appreciate that. And thank you to administration as well. Yeah. All right. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion from Mr. Wells. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Burns Gilbert. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank